they're staying on the same side. Here they are, Solary blue side, Big Chroma on red side. So priority is to have more tools for early game, or at least it's what you wanted Solary to have on this second match. How should the bans go in this case, Solary?
Still going with the same idea, to be honest, because the previous bans were really good. Rumble definitely needs to be removed, going in with a little bit meta proactive champions like Makai, for example, maybe Rel that we saw banned by Big Chroma in the previous game. Those bans that we saw previous time still make a lot of sense. So if it's going to be a full repetition, I'm fine with it.
Okay, J-Real, are you expecting any full repetition of the bans of on this first round at least?
I'm glad they took away the Lilia, personally. I think that was a really good takeaway. I think it just looks way too strong for Trez.
Yeah.
So removing that one, completely valid. I like it a lot. I think also taking away the Maokai, taking away the Rumble, I think they're really suitable picks. It does obviously open up a little bit more variance, and I am interested that Big Chroma has decided to ban away Ari, which means Rel is on the board. I don't know if anyone's going to pick it, though.
Well, the priority for Solary seems to be, at least they are hovering Sejuani. No, they actually picked Sejuani, and Big answered with Zaya Jarvan.
Huh.
Sorry. Oh no, it's not Jarvan, it's a Rel. What do you feel about this combo?
I have a lot of feelings about this combo already, because Rel is a very flex pick. Does she go to Trez? Does she go to the bot lane in the end? We don't know, and we might know up until the very last moment. Rel saw a little bit of nerfs in the very previous patch, but she still feels very fine either of the lanes. So either way, it is a good pick for Big Chroma with Zaya. Maybe not paired up with Rakan, or maybe they're still going to snatch this bird away to make sure they have the lovebird situation on the bot lane. Either way, it's a strong beginning, and Solary answering in a very interesting way with a lot of hovers there.
I honestly love Alistar. I think it's such a strong champion that has a little more tools. You know, if the first time he goes in, it doesn't work, he has a tools to try it over again. And they paired it up with a Jinx. Now on the other side, Xerath, J-Real. What do you think it's going to be their pick there?
I don't know exactly what they're going to lock in, because obviously if we do look at the side of Solary, they've locked in ADC support jungle. I think that would be quite a prominent pick right now if you are, but then you give away your flex. So I actually think that maybe locking something that could also be flexed could aid to the drama that is going to be where do things go. The Wukong there was locked in, obviously could go top, could go jungle. I imagine it's more likely to go jungle, which I'm a little bit surprised about, right? I'm surprised they didn't decide to flex the Rel into the jungle when you are playing against that Alistar, who obviously can cancel your jump in. But I think all in all, they've locked in a pretty good comp so far. They're giving a lot of potential over to that Zaya.
Yeah, especially because this Wukong has been buffed, so is viable again on this patch, Solary. I don't think we mentioned this on the pre-show, but it is a viable pick right now, or at least it should be. Now for Solary, we have Syndra on the mid lane, and Twitch. Is it gonna be Twitch?
Is it Twitch jungle by any chance? No, it is not Twitch jungle. It is on the top lane in the end for them. A very interesting change, and I kind of mentioned one before we went into the draft. I am quite happy to see it being on the side of Solary. Just allows them to have a much more stable early game and laning phase. But oh my goodness, when was the last time you saw Volibear in a game?
Well, J-Real, do you remember?
No, it's been a minute. Maybe because they heard the thunder crashing outside Solary's room or something. They were like, you know what? Volibear sounds like good right now. It's a bit of a different one. Obviously, quite good into tanks. Will do quite well into the Ornn, right? Has really good sustainable damage. So I do like this pick actually quite a lot. I way prefer it, and I'm going to say it right now, than Renekton into the Ornn matchup. I think that's a little bit of a rough one. So I do think this Volibear is going to go pretty well. I want to say quickly about Solary, though. I don't know if they just like went on the protein shake or something, but they got some big picks. They got Ornn and Sejuani, these tanky people with the Alistar as well. They came bulked up.
Oh, well, let's talk about this adaptation. Let's talk about the tools they have this time around and how can they win this game. Solary, starting with you, do you think they can make it?
They have to, because otherwise it's going to be a 2-0 for Big Chroma. If Big Chroma win this is game over for Solary, so they really need to make it make sure that they drag this all the way into the best of 3 into the third match. But they do have the tools, and their teamfight potential is going to be insane. Their scaling is insane. The only worry for me is pretty much the same as it was in the previous game. Yes, you have the scaling. The mid game is in your hands. The late game is in your hands, definitely. Where is the early? This is something that Solary will need to answer to me in the game.
Absolutely. Now, J-Real, well, give me your thoughts about who has more tools. I don't like to say better draft, because it really depends on the execution of those picks and the execution of what they want to do with these compositions. But who do you think maybe has an advantage with the composition?
Okay, I'm starting off with both teams have a lot of tools, but only one team is going to be able to make a house a home, because what makes a home is the small things. It's the ornaments, right? They have the Ornn, they have the late game, they have the Jinx, they have the Syndra. Scaling, tank, good team fight. I love it. I really like the adaptation for Solary. The only thing they got to worry about is that early game. And if we look on the other side of the board, we do have Big Chroma, who do have a lot of potential. Now, I also like Big Chroma's draft a lot. They have a lot of presence in terms of setting up with Poke from the Xerath. They have a lot of potential tank front line coming out from the Rel and the Volibear to match the big tanky side of Solary. But they also have very strong team fight and very good peel for that Xayah, which could make it really tough for Solary to get in onto that carry and pick up those kills. However, they have a Syndra. So if they click one button and there's no Featherstorm, goodbye.
Goodbye. Goodbye indeed. And I want to take this into consideration and to what happened on game 1, and looking at these players, looking at what they've shown us so far. Where do you think the game is going through? Solary, starting with you. Is it going to be the same as game 1? Is it going to be an adaptation? Top lane seems to be a little more an island this time around, maybe?
Yeah, pre-level 6 definitely is going to be an island. After level 6, both of these top laners surprisingly become very bloodthirsty and want to go onto each other. Especially it would be the case for Volibear if there is going to be Wukong around this top lane, because together 2-on-1 or even 2-on-2 they will have a lot of kill pressure onto Solary. But everywhere else the game doesn't look like it's going to be very explosive in the early game. Of course anything can happen in the end in the game, but it doesn't look like so. Just judging by the picks, everybody on both of the teams want to get to their level 6 as soon as possible. The only place where I'm really expecting fights in the beginning of the game is going to be on the bot lane, and not because of the AD carries. AD carries just want to farm up. These supports are going to be very bloodthirsty in this game.
As I mentioned before, I love Alistar pick. I think it can be a really forgiving champion to make those engages and to try to make things happen, to try to go for plays, and I think they have really solid tools to make it happen, J-Real. How do you feel like, if you were playing against this, how would you try to not, how to try to deal with this, not get caught on those plays, on those engages?
Run fast and have flash up. I think that's the way, because for either side they got ways to make plays, right? We talked about how fast bears and horses run. Well, Big Chroma got both, and then if you're looking at the side of Solary, they got the Minotaur who's running around crazy, but you've also got someone on a boar and the Ornn horn that can just hit you from 3 maps away.
Well, will this be the last game of the series, or is Solary taking it to game 3? We shall see. So J-Real and Solary, take it away.
Thank you very much. And as we go into game 2, the potential decider for this game. And I talked about houses, I talked about homes, but now I'm going to be Sherlock Holmes. I've got the monocle, Solary. Where do I need to be looking in this early game?
Definitely the junglers are going to be a very big thing to look at. These two are going to make or break the game, especially if we're talking about the early game. We already saw how important Tres was in the early game, in the previous game. We already saw how making a lot of attempts to get things going, especially around the bot lane, and this is where we will need to shift our attention. I don't want to fully disregard the other lanes though, because on the mid lane maybe it's going to be a little bit more stale, because these are two mid laners who are very similar to each other. They have a lot of range. Of course, Xerath is going to win this one against pretty much anybody, but Syndra has quite a lot of hers as well. They both want to just sit back and scale, and they both are very immobile. But the top lane is the only lane where I'm absolutely not sure what's going to happen. I don't know if you should look at it, Mr. Sherlock, or not, because things might just not be moving there whatsoever, or it might be a constant fight between these two, and I cannot predict what it's going to be.
I imagine there's a lot of fighting, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any siblings, right? But
I do.
these two are siblings. Volibear and Ornn, realistically, I believe, are siblings.
Actually,
and
yeah,
they
actually
are going
are.
to scrap. They're going to have beef, man, because one of them ate the last cookie, okay? And I'm saying that they're both ready to rumble about that point. I think that there's going to be a lot of fighting. I don't think it's going to lead to too much, though. I think that it's not going to get too serious before someone calls mum and the fight will end. But I think when we look at the rest of the map, if you're looking at this bot lane, you're looking at the mid lane, that are the crucial points of this game. Because as you said, that's where all the carries are situated. And we also have, with those carries, a lot of potential for fights with the Wukong, the Sejuani, the Alistar, and the Rell. And we're talking about it. Here comes the engage. Good knockup, though, from AOC. Able to just stop Lumi from getting any damage, any engage off on Koyoska.
This is why Wandering Wraith is such a fan of Alistar. He just doesn't allow engage all-in champions on the bot lane like Rell to leave and to do freely what they want to be doing on the bot lane. And at the same time, if you want to turn things around, if you want to go into the enemy, Alistar is going to be perfect for that. So the bot lane is pretty much going to look like that. Both of the supports are going to be trying to go into each other, into the enemy's carries constantly. What worries me a little bit for Big Chroma's side right now is that this Xayah is not running with a cleanse. She's running with a ghost, which is always very risky for Xayah. So, ooh, how he's getting caught here. But, no, it's not going to result into anything, fortunately or unfortunately for us, because we always want to see these teams brawl with each other.
And I do agree with you, right? I think one little bit of a problem that I have for Big Chroma is, yes, they have a lot of ways to get aggressive into a fight, but their comp for me is much more based on people, right? You have a huge poke champion in the Xerath, and you have Xayah, who is probably the best kiter in the game based on how the feathers go, and the blade caller can just rip through all members that try and get too close to her. But in terms of going forward, not the greatest champion, and Jinx with the increased range and the fact that if they get excited, could absolutely smother them in those late game team fights. So I do wonder how they're going to have to play around that one. But obviously the engage, the jump in factor from the Volibear, the Stormbringer, and also the Wukong, maybe they're going to be able to find ways to get onto Koyaska. But right now, How starting to pass down to this bot lane. Do we maybe see a little bit of action soon?
Not right now. There is still a Skull Crab. Maybe there is going to be action around the Skull Crab because there is still vision available for Big. They know what is happening. They know where How is. They know how low How is at the moment. But they cannot really rotate Vixen quickly enough because it's still there. Is again very immobile mid lane champion. So they just let it be. Maybe it's going to be a fight for the top lane scuttle because How wants to have the double scuttle situation on the map, and definitely Trace doesn't want to allow it to happen. She wants to keep her top lane as safe as possible. Though speaking of safe, these top laners do not want to be safe whatsoever.
They're just fighting so much, but this is what I'm talking about. They're gonna fight, they're gonna rumble, they're gonna get themselves into tough situations, but no one's gonna go down. Although talking about going down, Trez was trying to put a bit of pressure onto How, but How able just to withstand any sort of damage and just gonna be able to walk away as we go down to that bot lane. Still just farming up, and it is feeling like a pretty quiet map at the start, but saying that, Vixen gonna get stunned up. There's the lockup from the Sejuani. Is there enough damage? One more auto, go for it with the stun! The shocking orb, and then the kill from the tower. It's a double to Vixen in the early game.
No way! Solary just came to the mid lane. We're like, hey, Vixen, we have a present for you. We have a double kill for you, one of which is going to be a first blood. This was such an unfortunate gang from Solary. So many things went wrong for them. It's just a disaster, a complete disaster for them, both in terms of the early game and in terms of how the mid lane is going to look like right now. That is just so bad, Jiren. We even have a replay of that, and look at how many things went wrong for them. The beginning is great. How comes in, a lot of control coming from both her and Fangs. They almost get Vixen down, but Vixen had the flash all this time. The only way of mobility for her. But after that, a lot of control coming out from Vixen onto How. And at the same time, Fangs overstepping a little bit, getting just one tower shot, which was more than enough to get her down. So bad for Solary.
Towers do a lot of damage in the early game, and I feel like Solary felt that. And it's going to be a tough one, but I don't think, unlike last game, they're not on the path of they need to win early, right? They have such good late game scaling. If we were going to pick late game scalers, I think Syndra, Jinx are pretty high up there in terms of tier lists. Yeah. But they have to make it to the late game, and if they are going to start losing leads to that, like Vixen, it could cause big pressures when they go for those Drakes, when they go for the Barons, because the poke, the control is just so good.
You're so right, because there is one thing that you need to remember looking at these two teams. Yes, there is scaling available for everybody, but on the side of Solary, this scaling, even though it's going to be really hitting hard in the late game, it takes much more time to come online. But wait a second, because Hao is still on the mid lane looking for the repetition of what's happened before. That is very bold, but no, she's not going anywhere. So I have a say.
Ooh.
I'll see. What?
Flash forward, didn't manage to get the headbutt, and then the pulverize a little bit early. Looked for the gank. I think bringing another member for that gank could have worked out, because as we said, it was one auto damage to kill off Vixen and not lose any members. But unfortunately, this one not going to work out there. Vixen still quite happy just farming it up and already building a bit of a level lead.
And that is the thing, the level lead for Big Chroma, because Vixen already sitting on the Lost Chapter. Again, a very nice power spike for lane phase, already feeling very confident in there. But if you look at the mid game, Big are going to be stronger in the mid game, because for Solary they need a lot of time to get to their power spikes. For Big, the power spikes are coming much quicker, especially I'm looking at this bot lane. Xayah only needs 2 items to get going, but she might not get to them.
Going to start a little bit of a fight here. He's going to get a nice double root there and able to walk out pretty cleanly. And that is the blessing for the side of Big Chroma. Their ADC, they can just kind of keep everyone at arm's length. Zarbi able just to keep themselves pretty safe, and it allows for Lumi to start roaming around, and we'll see if that is going to start picking up as we do get towards those level 6s. Dragon, though, going to be started up for some Solary, very similar to last game, but here comes a mid-gank, and Fang's in so much trouble. Cyclone takes up the kill.
It's just Trez, man, so clean. She just comes in, she claims what is hers for her and for her team, but look at that!
Oh! Right of the Arcane, going to do a bit of damage, but no steal just yet, and Hao able to get away, although maybe not. Ignite ticking over. Is that enough damage? One more will burn them down. Goodbye to Hao. Nice pick up from Lumi.
0-4 already, maybe even more, because look at the top lane.
Ooh, Big Crow going in. There's the Stormbringer. No more tower for you, Yukiko. And do they have the damage? The damage is not there, and the tower comes back to life. Tower's OP in this game.
Oh yes, this is a tower revenge. The top lane tower, just look at what happened on the mid lane a little bit early. Was like, hey, I can do that too, you know, I can kill the enemy champion as well. And Kermac overstepping there a little bit, not being able to find Yukiko, who kited everything just so damn nicely. Very good action there from Solary's top lane, but can they extend it to somewhere else? Because they are still losing everywhere else on the map. They are in a very massive gold deficit. And speaking of gold, just quickly coming back to my previous point, Jinx needs to get her 3-item power spike, and her power spike is not going to happen before that. That is why we don't really see Jinx so much in the meta right now, because all the champions that we see are pretty much spiking at 2 items, except for AP Kaiser, but that's just, you know, a different type of stuff for some people who love playing weird stuff on the bot lane. But Jinx really has her power spike. It's a big power spike, but it comes much later than for the majority of the AD carries that are in the current meta. And it includes Xayah. She only needs 2 items. She gets Navori and something else on top, and she's good to go.
Indeed she is, and right now it does feel like Big are pretty good to go. Closing in on that 10-minute mark, to really about a 2k gold lead. They don't have the Dragon though. Solary are still in keeping with the fact that they're picking up those early objectives, and also the Herald taken by Solary too. So objectively, Solary doing much better, and I will hope that we potentially get a little bit of gold influxed into either Fangs or Koyoska to start that sailing going. Where do you kind of see the easy out for Solary? You said 3 items for the Jinx. Where are we looking at for the Syndra? Are they able to maybe get online a little bit faster?
No. Unfortunately, Syndra is the same case. Not necessarily the same, because she's not that reliant on her items, but rather on her levels. She needs to level up her ultimate. She needs to get to her late game. Before that, she's not going to feel very good. It depends, of course, on how well the early game goes for her, but already she's 0-2. This is not looking good for Syndra. She will need a lot of time to get fully online, and that is why I'm worried for Solary's teamfight potential right now, because we're stepping slowly but surely into the mid-game territory, and I feel like this is where Big Chroma are going to be stronger than Solary, and unless Solary play really cleanly and drag time for as long as possible, they're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Talking about trouble though, Krovac is taking a lot of damage here. Here comes the Ornhorn, there's the knock-up, and it might be good night.
Oof. Yeah, that's On for you. What else can I say? On is everything. He is a tank, he's an assassin, he is a duelist, whatever you want to do. Don't pick up the fight with an On because he's most probably going to win. And with Volibear, who we don't see a lot in the games right now for a reason, he's not really feeling the strongest at the moment, especially if you compare to him right after the rework. He is not unfortunately able to stand against that champion, but oh my god, the damage from Vixen!
Oh! Dodgeball, dodgeball. One left, one more. Is it there? Ooh! No shot. Fangs, good side stepping there. Able to dodge, duck, dip, dodge, and dive out of those shots. But right now, things feel like they've slowed down. Okay, I feel like Solary have been able to kind of quell the tempo a little bit, and obviously with Yukiko building up a bit of a lead, it's not the win condition that they would be looking for, but the ornaments could be coming through a little bit earlier, which does give almost like a faux power spike in the respect of, yes, they need to still get to those 3-item power spikes, they need to get to those levels, but maybe they feel a little bit better. I'm talking about maybe a bit better. Here's a fight into the bot side, and in goes the Magnet Storm, but here is how they are going to miss the Glacial Prison, but it doesn't matter. Lumi going to go down, and now getting excited is Koyaska. Can they find the zap? It's not going to be in range, not up, and it will be an easy out for the Xayah. Ghost having to be propped by Xavi, and now maybe we might even see a tower dive here. Still does have the Feather Storm, so would be a little bit risky, but the Herald going to be dropped. That will give some plates over Koyaska, and a much needed influx of gold.
Oh, that's so nice for the bot lane of Solary. But wait for it, because Trez is on the hand.
On the hunt indeed. Cyclone going to get the knock-up onto Fangs. They have another one. And goodbye to the mid laner.
Typical Trez things, to be honest. Again, she just goes in, she sees an opportunity for a kill, and they're going to take it no matter the cost. And the cost is usually not even that high. But can we go back to this bot lane for a second? Because if there is one thing that Sejuani loves in the lanes that she is ganking, it is when they have a melee champion. Because they stack up the passive of her E so nasty. And the stacked up passive of her E means a stun onto somebody. And that was the case for Illumina. Unfortunately, she got caught in the middle of everything. She got stunned in the place and killed on the spot. Very unfortunate situation for her. But very fortunate for Solary because they're finding the kills at least somewhere, and we have the repetition of what happened with Trez a little bit earlier going on to Fangs, and with all the control just never letting the enemy champion go, especially if this enemy champion doesn't have any escape built in that kit.
Yeah, I said, when Anna asked me, when One Ring Wraith asked me a little bit earlier, how do you get away from that? You need flash. And if you don't have it, then, well, you're in trouble. And Trez showed that, they proved that. It's just very difficult to get away from the Wukong. And also, in general, it's a sentiment where they just have a lot of potential. But to potential, we might get a potential kill onto Fangs here. Stormbringer is going to give Crow a bit of time. There's the Unstoppable Force and the Unleashed Power. And that is going to be a pickup for Fangs. And in the bot lane, Koyaska fighting for their life. Lumi trying to get aggressive onto this ADC. And now taking a huge chunk. Rocket! Go! Boom! Koyaska picks up another kill. A Super Mega Death Rocket clutches up another one for the side of Solary.
Which is the most interesting is that it started as an attempt from Koyaska to protect Aussie because Aussie was being chased down and super low on health, so Koyaska stepped up, firing back at the enemies, but then in the end claimed another kill. That is a 2-0-0 Jinx, and Jinx is a very fun champion in terms that she gets excited. She wants to get excited not just in a fight, she wants to get excited in the game itself because she wants to get this gold going into her, she wants to get snowballed, and here we can see Aussie getting very unfortunately, very caught out. Super low in health, has to flash away, but here comes Koyaska saving the life of her support and in the process getting a kill for herself. That is really good AD carry action from Solary's bot lane.
So strong. And I love it, man. I love watching the Super Mega Death Rocket fly and when it connects. It's one of those ones where it's just like, yeah, that felt good. You know, everyone enjoyed that. It's like those, you know, those TikToks where people like roll bottles down the stairs. It's like that kind of sensation.
Oh, I never get them, to be honest. I don't understand how people enjoy them.
It's just like, it's just a nice, like you just see the ball explode at some point. You know, I don't know. I don't know. There's something about it.
Bottle.
Maybe it's a bit harsh, but either way, in terms of League of Legends champions, they all decided to be on the Rift. You know, so if they're going to get hit with a rocket, well, it's kind of their fault. You know, but back on to this game. Big had a bit of a lead. It's been closed down quite a lot by Solary. They're now only 900 gold behind.
That is nothing, to be honest. Right now it's going to be even... Right now it's going to be bigger. This trade is the first trade of the game, and Big again are putting a lot of emphasis onto the mid lane, opening it up as soon as possible, which makes sense because they have Vixen on the mid lane, who is already very nicely ahead, but now Koyaska is in a lot of trouble.
Trez close. Oh, what is that damage? What was the damage? Goodbye, good night to the ADC and maybe AOC as well. Although Fangs is coming in support. Can they cause change in this fight? It's not going to be so. And now Unleashed Power almost doing enough, but it's not going to be so. Trez gets out alive. And it's all one big W for Big Chroma. Although a little bit of an overstay. How picks up a kill back?
Big got almost unpunished, and at the same time Chroma was doing the Herald on the top lane, which is really crazy considering that Yukiko has been killing Chroma so far over and over, and they're fighting for it now.
Oh, gets the Herald, and the kill goes over to Yukiko. All going well for Solary.
Koyaska and Yukiko just smurfing this game apparently, especially for Koyaska. That is important after this unfortunate death. You talked about the damage coming out of Vixen. That was some crazy amount of damage there. Indeed, that was pretty much a one-shot, but again, Jinx is not exactly the buffiest of the champions. It's not too hard to kill her when you are a mid laner who is already so ahead and so far away from the enemies. This is how we're going to, my goodness, Yukiko, run away.
Fights after fights after fights. Yukiko, tanky though, able to start walking away from this one, will get out alive. I feel like Ornn is just that D&D character that just has... They said, what do you want 20 in your stats? And they said, yes. And it's just all of them.
Yes, exactly. This is Ornn, and this is Yukiko as Ornn. Had to invest Flash there in that exchange of the top lane, but if you look at the items, a little bit greedy there. Already upgrading the first ornament goes into the Jack show for Yukiko herself, but again, that makes sense. She wants to be the strongest one on the summoner, so she wants to be a very reliant front lane, and Solary will need a lot of front lane. They need to keep their back lane as safe as possible and as far from the enemies, because for Big, it's not going to be too big of a deal. They have Vixen, who has a lot of range. She's going to stay away from the enemies, and it's going to be super hard to get to her. Saya has very good tools of disengaging from the enemies, but for Solary, they are immobile. Both their mid lane and their AD carry need to be in a pretty close proximity to the enemies. Just like that.
It's so... Oh, the good get away, the chompers, but here comes the Rite of the Arcane. It's going to be one bammed. Big piece of damage from the Xerath, and it is goodbye to your ADC. Trez able to get away safely as well, and Trez has been a menace, but talking about menaces to ADCs, it feels like Yukiko trying to fit that role too, but Big Crow going to be able to pick up a kill onto the Alistar as well, and I feel like this scrappy game is working out much better for Big Chroma. And you talked about it, you cannot leave your carries alone. That Syndra, that Jinx, they're just too easy to pick up for Trez, and we've seen it time and time again. The Wukong swoops in, picks up a kill, and can leave.
As Solary, they either need a lot of vision around their carries to make sure that nobody's approaching them, or they need to never leave them alone. I'm going to say right now for Koyaska, split pushing is never going to be an option, because Trez is going to be punishing her over and over for staying alone on the lanes, and Jinx is unfortunately going to be very punishable until she builds up to her third item, and even then, if you catch her nicely with a lot of control that Wukong does have a lot in this kit, it's going to be a pretty easy job to kill her, to take her down. So for Solary, yes, they need to start grouping up as soon as possible, which works nicely for Big, because they're fine either way. They're fine grouping up and taking the team fights, and they're also fine just catching Solary one by one, splitting up and through them out themselves, and applying a lot of pressure everywhere at once.
And we talked about the win conditions, right, of both these teams. And Solary's is basically keep carries alive, get to late game. Obviously, we see this replay. They are able to pick up Koyaska, but in terms of gold, Koyaska is staying afloat. They are on tempo with the side of Xavi. But it's about getting yourselves to that late game, and I do think that playing very close to the team, having good team fights is also going to be very prominent, as we are going to get into another one. Good escape from How. We'll get them out safely. But in terms of Big, they are already meeting what they need to do. They've got Vixen ahead. They've got the poke pressure. They are starting to scale up Xavi as well, and their tanks are doing what they need to do, and Trez is picking off the people they need to find.
And Trez is doing a tremendously good job at that. Is it going to work on the top lane, though? Yukiko is alone there.
Yukiko is alone, still quite tanky, but I think this might be just enough damage to take us over the edge. Goodbye to the Ornn, finally. The Reign of Terror stopped for a little brief moment, and Baron is up. Does this potentially open up enough? I don't think Big have enough to do that. They're going to go straight for this top tower.
they need to set their Isaiah on the second item as soon as possible. They cannot really go for the ban right now unless they're really crazy, and we have seen crazy moves from both the teams already throughout the day, but they're doing a good job right now indeed opening the top lane for themselves a little bit more. Would like to open the mid lane a little bit more because right now the situation there is equal between the teams. Vixen.
Talks about opening up that mid lane, how almost catching out the Xerath, but good range, good flash away will get them to safety. 404 right now. Vixen feeling pretty untouched in general across these team fights. And how do Solary start to close that one down? How do they start to open up the weaknesses that Big have in their team?
I don't think they need to start it right now. Rather, I think they need to try to drag the game for as long as possible. Try to slow down Big's march onto them and towards their base, because again they will have the ornaments, they will have the scaling. Jinx is on 2 items right now, picking up the IE as the mythic item. I haven't seen this item in so long. I'm just happy to see it making its way back, so a little bit more of that crit chance for Jinx, but she needs a little bit more. She needs more attack speed in her pocket, she needs more damage in general. And for Solary, they need more items going into the late game. This is where they're going to be the strongest. This is where they're most probably going to out-damage Big in big numbers. But they just need to get there alive. So far, 7-10, the difference in the gold is not too drastic. I would say it hurts quite a lot, especially on the mid lane. But it's not the end of the world for Solary as long as they manage to stay afloat.
And we saw their ornaments starting to come through for the Jinx as well. Koyaska getting a little bit extra damage. You talked about them needing scaling. They're now 1 item away from the power spec they need to hit. Looking over at Fangs as well. Level 12, building up almost at 2 items. The scaling is there, but it does feel like Big are going to try and stop them from scaling any further. But a nice use of the traps, and with a bit of support now, moving with AOC does keep Koyaska safe.
Oh, right now this is about the vision, and it's going to be a very important thing to look at, because vision needs to be super clean from both of the teams, especially around the objectives, especially around this Baron Trez. This is not the right Trez. I was caught there by the Chompers, so nothing happens just right now, but in a minute it's going to be a dragon, another objective to keep the vision on. And if you look at Big, they have a lot of wards around this part of the jungle already, around the board part of the map in general, while for Solary they don't see anything. There is not a single ward that I'm seeing on the minimap right now on the board side of the map, which means unless they do something right here, right now about it, this dragon is going to be lost to them.
And unlike the last game, Big really prioritizing the dragons when they're ahead. They've managed to pick up a 2nd dragon. They're now looking to claim their 3rd. And Mountain Soul really strong in this fight when we're talking about one-shot potential from the mid laners and big resets from ADCs. It does feel like we need to see some sort of contention from the side of Solary, but as you said, they need to buy a bit more time.
And it's not easy buying time here, because right now 20 seconds Big are going to force the fight around the Drake. They are going to force a lot of things from Solary. Are Solary going to answer it? Right now the best idea for them would be to leave this dragon for good, but it's going to be a soul point, and I absolutely agree with you. This soul is going to be massive for Big, because they have the front line, but it's not as prominent as even Owen alone for Solary, and they have Sejuani on top of that for Big. The soul is going to be big. At the same time, if Solary get the soul somehow, they win, but do they?
Magnet Storm coming in. Good flash away from Koyaska, going to stay a bit alive, but there is Trez, the problem that has been popping up for this team. Going to pick up 2, and Solary are able to walk away, but for what cost? 2 members down, jungler gone. It looks like Baron is going to be on Big's cards.
Forget about the dragon. This is going to be the Baron for Big. They have the ear 80 carry with them. They have their mid laner as well to provide additional damage. Everything is working just too fine for them. And again, no vision for Solary means don't see what is happening in the pit or around it. Very good fight from Big. We wanted to see them force this fight. And one more thing that we wanted to see from them is coming from all the way from the previous game. We wanted to see more action from them around Koyaska, trying to punish her for being too good of an 80 carry, for being too untouchable in the previous game. And the moment they get onto Koyaska, the moment Koyaska is down, you can see how well the fight is going for Big.
And I have to give it up to Trez, right? We saw the engage come out from Lumi, forces the flash away from the Jinx, but then Trez is just there every single time. We see Koyaska a little bit alone, and Trez is there, like a shadow, just always on top of them.
It's not just Trez though, this time it was also Lumi with an excellent engage all the way from the Raptors right onto the enemy, right onto Kriaska, locking her down. Rel is a very prominent champion, and we can see why she was picked so early for pick and why they almost immediately decided to rotate her towards the support role, working really well together with the control coming out of Wukong. This is why it's so hard to team fight 5-on-5 big right now for Solary, because it is really hard to do anything with the control. It is not even about the damage, even though they have a lot of it on the side of big. It is about the control and the fact that Solary are not able to answer it with anything.
Yeah, 6k gold lead, the item advantage, the level advantage, it's a lot coming out for Big Chroma, but can Solary have a second win like they had in game 1? Can they slow out the game? If we do start to see those items completed, maybe things start to change, but we're looking at this side of Big just starting to close out turrets, picking up gold across the map and forcing their will upon the team of Solary. But here we go, Big Ornhorn is going to force the Featherstorm out of them, and now they're just going to go aggressive. Yukiko is going to fall down as we see how chasing down Trez, that will keep your ADC safe, but it's not going to be able to give your team much more hope as they're now moving on to the tier 3 in the top side.
Oh, no, that was not a good fight for Solary. Unfortunately, they were so split. It's like they were having 2 different fights at the same time. That is never good, especially when your base is crumbling down.
LeBron James, here comes the arcane. It is just too much from the zero. The damage is just dropping them like flies. Goodbye, Solary. They put up a good contention in this series, but Big are just going to be a little bit too massive as they pick up game 2.
2-0 in the end it is, and Big Chroma are picking up their second victory and their victory in this best of 3 series. They still will need to go through at least 2 more, but I recall correctly from today, but the first one is already in their hands, in their pockets. It's a very nice victory for them. In the second game they were super decisive. Very good to see them understanding very clearly what their mistakes, or okay, now let's call it mistakes, were in the first game, working on them very quickly all the way towards the second game and taking it in their hands.
Now, Anna said it from the start, adaptation key to this tournament. They did it, they improved, they made a bigger statement in game 2, and they took that one away from Solary. And all in all, I think it was just a really good showing from them. I think that Solary definitely showed that they have a lot of potential, and we said it from the start of the day. On their highs, on their top performances, they are dangerous. But Big Chroma, they really showed up in game 2, and they were able to put down the Solary defiance, the resistance, and they were able to pick up a win.
Unfortunately, sometimes the games just come down to the fact who makes less mistakes on the map and in the fight. And in this game, definitely there were quite a lot of mistakes from Solary, just very small ones, but all together combined, they left them not being able to take this game back into their hands at any single moment of the game. They still played really well in the first game. They were exceptional in the second game. They still were really good moments for them, especially for individual players. But in the end, it is Big who were better at pretty much everything in the second game, and they are taking the second victory and progressing further, and we can't wait to see more from them.
Indeed, as you said, they do still have more games to play, so this isn't the end of the road for any team by no means. Group stages will be 3 best of 3s, but we are going to have a quick break. When we come back, we'll break down what we saw in that series, but for now, go get a little bit of a drink.